And welcome to Mind Over Matter for February 4th, 2016. Hopefully, if anybody was waiting around for me, they are still here and were patient enough. I do apologize. I did get a phone call I was expecting just before I had to go live, and I unfortunately couldn't avoid it. I had hoped that it wouldn't come in during the Mind Over Matter or just before. Sure enough, it did. So, anyway, today's Mind Over Matter, the topic today I want to talk to you about is words. There's a few things I want to try and tackle here, and I hope that I can keep them together in a nice, contiguous manner so that they have some meaning for you. We talk about marketing and advertising. The premise of why I do the webinars is as part of a members community that needs some guidance and how they can accomplish the goals and mission that they're trying to accomplish. And one of the things that we need to understand is words. Marketing is all about words. We may take it for granted. In fact, I know that we take it for granted that how marketing can impact our decision making. It impacts our the way we feel. It impacts the way someone else feels. I consider myself a bit of a wordsmith, if you will, when it comes to writing. I will often perhaps not be as eloquent when it comes to speaking. I'm trying to work on that. But one of the things I find alarmingly consistent, and the reason why I find it alarmingly consistent is because it has happened to me many, many times. We live in a very advanced technological age, and I will wrap this up, not wrap this up, sorry, I will tie this back into marketing and advertising. I just want to try and frame it for you a little bit. We live in a very technologically advanced time. For some of the people that I work with on a day-to-day basis, or at least week to week anyway, are of an older generation, older than myself, and I say an older generation because I believe they're anywhere from 15 to 25 years older than I am, which puts them in a different generation than I am, right? What I find is that often they reach back for the times when there wasn't the technology, when you actually had to speak to somebody on the phone, you actually had to write a letter. You know, if you wanted to communicate with someone, your options were limited. I mean, you can go all the way back to Morse code and carrier pigeons if you like, but the concept is quite simple. When you're communicating with somebody via voice, you can hear my voice. I can raise my voice and I can lower my voice so you can just barely hear me. But with that timbre in my voice and with inflection in the words, and I can drive home a point with my body language, which you can't see in this specific instance, but you can hear it in my voice. And what I think has become a very lost art is the art of communication. One of the ways that it started with email, of course, right? And one of the things that has become almost, well, how should we say? It's almost like you can't live without it, is the texting. I don't know how familiar you are with texting, but I have to wonder, have we pushed ourselves too far into the technology that we've lost the art of being human? I know that my mom will often, I'll give you the example. My mom often gives me a little hard time about the texting because she's just recently become sort of more of a texter. often in the relationship between my mother and my father, we would communicate often with dad, and dad would communicate with mom, and then everybody'd be on the same page. Yes, my dad actually did have the capacity to keep mom in the loop. Now, dad passed away a few years back, and forced us to be in communication with mom on the details. It's not that we didn't ever talk to mom or didn't ever have conversations with mom. For me personally, I had far more conversations with my mom than I did with my dad. But the 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 little details, which I think texting is fantastic for, details, little details. But my mom will often ask me, and the story is that the other night I needed to stop by and talk to her. I needed to discuss a plan that I have, and I wanted to know what her thoughts were. I sent her a text that just said, "Are you going to be home tonight?" And because I was doing some other volunteer business in the same part of the city as where she lives, so I thought, well, I'll just tie the two together. Great. So I went and did my stuff that I had to do. Kept checking my text to see if she had sent me a message back. Da, da, da. Well, I didn't get a message back from her, so I decided not to pop over just in case she wasn't home. And if she had gone to a movie or something, or she was out with friends, she's not going to answer her phone because she generally doesn't do that if she's out and about. So I just thought, well, I'll leave it. I got a message back the next day. It was, why didn't you call me? I was home. Well, there's a great question, and I don't even have uh, an even I don't have any kind of rebuttal whatsoever to that question, other than I don't know. Uh, so it got me to thinking about the concept of phone calls and texting. And although it wasn't a big deal because I just went to see her the next night, it wasn't really that big of a deal. The point I was making was that sometimes we rely on the text too much. And I think where we get into the problem of relying on that texting too much is when we try to have conversation in a text. I think that the beauty of human interaction is that face-to-face connection, and at minimum voice-to-voice connection, which is what a phone call will provide. And this is going to be odd coming from me. If anybody that knows me from my own personal life here has the opportunity to hear this, is going to find it interesting, because I'm have probably for the last 5 years been almost an anti phone call person. Text me, text me, text me, text me. And it's mostly because I can do more than one thing at a time. If I'm having multiple conversations with people in a text, and I can work on my computer at the same time. However, that's work related texting conversation. It's very dry, emotionless. Just, okay, we need this done. We need this done. I can meet you here at this time. We can meet there at this time. Where are we going to eat? Like, you can just nail stuff down. Bing, 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 bing. See you there at 6 o'clock. That simple. Then there comes that time when you try to have just a personal conversation. And I personally suffer from the inability to recognize that my, we'll call it like programmed responses to texting, which is often short, sweet, and maybe not sweet, short and potentially curt at times, but it's mostly just because we're driving home points conversation. And then my other poor habit is I often will text while I drive. I know, shouldn't do that. I get it. It's a bad habit, but it is a habit nonetheless. So until I have the opportunity, or until I continue to try to break myself of the habit, it's still a habit. So I don't need the a lecture or letters or you guys sending me all kinds of horrible feedback about not texting and driving. I know. But especially when I'm texting and driving, trying to have a conversation with somebody, it almost always ends in it almost ends the same way. I open up, I get the notification that a text has come in. I take a quick peek at it while I'm trying to keep my eyes on the road. Take a quick peek at it. I enlarge my font so it's huge so I can see it while I'm driving. It's a pathetic attempt to maintain my bad habit. But I look at the phone and I'm forced to sit back in my seat and think, okay, what the hell just happened here? And it's happened to me more times than I care to admit. And then I read back in the text, and in my mind, I'm filling in the blanks, right? I read back the text in my head, and I'm thinking, okay, yeah. Okay, well, where did we get from 0 to 60 here? Like, how did what? And it's usually me having upset somebody in some way. It's the power of the words. Because what I fail to understand in that moment is that my words are being interpreted by the reader. You and I, or let's say me and 9 other people, 10 of us in a group, can all read the exact same book, the exact same words on the page, exact same headings, exact same font, exact everything. But every single one of us reads a different story. We paint the picture in our mind as we read. I can't paint the same picture that you paint. You can't paint the same picture that I paint. Therefore, when we get through these texts and I'm trying to figure out where I've dropped the ball yet again, it's often a struggle because I don't fully understand where the missing where the inflection was added by the reader. So I challenge you and anyone who is cares to take up the challenge that when you're in a moment where you're having a personal conversation, try picking up the phone. I know we all live busy lives and we get ourselves running around doing way too much stuff for our own good. But take the time to make a phone call sometimes. Because when you hear someone's voice, it changes things. Now, how do I wrap this all back up and tie it all back into marketing and advertising? It's very simple. And these things have all happened in kind of a sequence for me just in this week. And one of them was having a conversation with someone, 2 conversations about marketing and advertising, one with somebody online and one with somebody offline. And I was able to use the information in both situations parallelly. Parallelly? Is that even a word? Did I just invent a word? In parallel. But what I found interesting was it related directly to the concept of texting. And I've had this conversation with myself numerous times, and it doesn't seem to stick. But the conversation about marketing and advertising, when you're writing an ad, what is your goal? When you're creating a PPC ad, a Bing ad, a print ad, a classified ad, a one-page ad for the newspaper, a little on the website, the banner ads, when you're whatever, a 30-second commercial. What is your goal? Your goal is to create a trigger for someone to take action. Something in the way you've said, or something in the way you've used the words on the page or in the media that you're sending, you're looking for action. Here's the challenge. Your words read by you, and your words in your ad mean something different to you than they do to the reader, which is the customer. Everybody should be giving that moment where you sit back and you think, oh my goodness, I just wrote that ad and I love it. But what if the person on the other end hates it? Or worse, actually, hate is fine because you actually elicited an emotional response. You've accomplished something because they won't necessarily forget you. Maybe not for the right reasons, but the worst possible scenario, they don't even notice it. How can they take action if they don't even know it's there? The challenge for those of you who are perhaps having been doing marketing and advertising for some time now, and you've kind of hit a little bit of a plateau. Maybe things aren't working as well, or you're only getting X amount of sales, and you'd love to get 3 times as much. I get asked the question all the time, well, what's wrong with my ad? I hate the question. There's nothing wrong with your ad. It works. Does it work to the degree that you'd like it? Nope. But it doesn't mean it doesn't work. But what it requires is for you to take a moment and think about your ad from someone else's perspective, most specifically, the target audience. Here's the catch. Sometimes the target audience is not filled with people that are of the like mind, of the same mindset as you are. Another, yes, you have a certain mindset. You're an entrepreneur. If you're spending time writing ads and developing marketing, guess what? You're not in the same mindset as the person who's looking for an online job or to buy whatever product you're trying to sell. Your mindset is in create action. Their mindset is solve a problem. 2 very different mindsets. So your challenge is to try and take off your actionable, or not actionable, sorry, trigger action mindset. Take that hat off and put on a different hat, which is, what would trigger me to take action? And here's one more little caveat to this whole thing. If in fact the action that you're trying to trigger is not something you would do yourself or buy yourself, you have a new challenge. Because at your core, you would never do the thing that you're trying to get people to do, and or you would never buy the product that you're asking people to buy. So that faces its own challenges, because you now need to embody a person in your target audience that thinks completely different than you and would take action different from you. The power of your words is what's going to make the difference. Whether it's texting with a close friend, whether it's texting with a family member, whether it's texting with a business associate, you need to be mindful of your words. My first tip would be, don't send text while you're driving. Multiple reasons, one of which you don't end up dying from doing it or killing somebody else. That would be reason number 1. Number 2, because you're not capable, even though you might think you are, you're not capable of critical thinking about the words that you're using in your messages. The same can be applied to your marketing. The critical thinking that needs to be applied to the words is far more important than where you're going to put that ad. That's a whole other ball of wax. It's a whole other topic. I mean, obviously, I'll just quickly sum that piece up. You put your ad in a place where the target audience will find it. If you're selling dog treats, don't put it in a tire store. Maybe a bad analogy, but you get my drift. Pet store. You're selling if you're a pizza dough maker or baker, or however you want to say that, and you need to find new clients to buy your pizza dough, going to a restaurant that does not serve pizza to try and convince them they should serve pizza because you've got this awesome dough might work, but it's like pushing a wet noodle uphill, which you could plan to do later on after you have some success. But in the beginning, wouldn't it make most sense to find the pizza places and find out if you can become their new supplier for pizza dough? So that's about where you place your ad. But the words you're using in that ad is what I want to focus on here today when it comes to, and let's be honest, I talk about ads as in from the perspective of marketing and advertising. But every single time you produce a document that has words on it that have come out of your mind and through your fingers, in texting, emailing, advertising, whatever it is, you have zero control. And I mean zero control of how those words will impact other people. That's why I find it to be a lost art, the communication using words. Because in a phone conversation, I say phone because that would be the voice conversation, or a face-to-face where you're sitting across the table or side by side with somebody when you're having the conversation, there's a capacity for you to embody the words that you are delivering. This is the essence of speeches and speaking, and embodying the words in which you are trying to deliver, but in such a way that the point that you're trying to drive home, or the action that you're trying to trigger, is magnified by the sound of your voice, the inflection in your words, body language if it happens to be live. I should have done this one with my video camera on today. I'm thinking about that now. But in hindsight, right? So what I want you to do today, and what I want you to take away from today, is to be mindful, consciously aware of the power of your words. You've seen it in so many different walks of life. I mean, I know in Canada we have, or not in Canada, but in Canada we just finished our federal election, and in the province that I live in, we now have a provincial election. But in the States, you have a presidential election that's in full force, and the power of the words chosen by candidates and people that are speaking about the candidates is just so amazing to watch. I'm often surprised that people think that I'm taking one side or the other because I listen to maybe one person more than the other, but it's honestly because of the way that they deliver their words. I'm actually studying the delivery. So my challenge for you today, going back to the challenge, is quite simply be mindful and consciously aware of the words that you choose, because you don't know how they're being received. Now, if you're face to face, or at least in a phone conversation, you have the capacity to at least direct and perhaps steer what direction someone might, how someone might feel about the words that you're using. But be very mindful and very consciously aware of the words that you choose when you're sending a text, an email, writing an ad, or some sort of body copy for an online scenario. Because it's in those environments where the reader is 100%, the reader is 100% in control of your words. You have absolutely nothing to do with the words that the person is reading. You write them on the page, you put them in you put them out into the ether with an intent behind them. But that intent is 100% gone once they reach the reader's eyes. The reader interprets your intent. right or wrong. It's right for the reader. That's the key. Remember, perception is reality. So if the reader perceives that your intent was XYZ, then to the reader, your intent very much is XYZ, even though you know that your intent was ABC. So if a message or something is super important, like conversation with people, humans, try to pick up the phone, meet them for coffee. When you are writing your advertising and marketing, be mindful of what the reader will perceive as your intent. I promise you, if you can embody the out of body experience of being the reader of your own words and what the intent could be, you'll find your sales conversions will increase, because you'll be starting to tap into the emotion that you're creating on the other side of your words. Because when you can align the words coming out of you with the desired intent being achieved on the other end, it's golden. That is your goal. The words you produce land with the reader with your desired intent. Be consciously aware and be mindful. Your words are powerful. Have a great day, guys. We'll see you next week.